This is ambitious, bold storytelling on the part of Jonathan Hickman. It feels like nothing else I've ever witnessed in the pages of X-Men. House of X #2 blew the collective minds of comic readers last week. Up this week is Powers of 10 #2. The first issue of the companion series was good, but a bit too dense for my taste. Thankfully, Jonathan Hickman tightens up the narrative this week, although the denseness does return in the final act of this week's Powers of 10. But overall, this is a great issue, and the easiest to read of the four so far. The debut issue of House of X and Powers of 10 laid a tremendous foundation. House of X #2 was a game changer that redefined everything we thought we knew about X-Men continuity. Powers of X #2 begins fleshing out Hickman's new X-Men status quo with some absolutely phenomenal characterization. Needless to say, I can't recommend this comic book any more highly. Now let's get into the details that make Powers of 10 #2 so effective, starting with the artwork from RB Silva and Marte Garcia. Silva's visuals this week take a noticeable step forward, but I still think they're lag behind Pepe Garcia's House of X. He continues using anime-inspired facial expressions, especially with Charles Xavier, that don't really fit the tone of the rest of the book. The one aspect RB Silva excelled at in the first issue were the action sequences. Unfortunately, there's only one panel that contains any action in the entire issue. Marte Garcia's color art continues to impress. The color work and the scenes during the X1 story arc are especially brilliant, but Garcia's far beyond solid the entire issue. He continues to provide an excellent sense of cohesiveness between House of X and Powers of 10. I do have one rather large criticism of RB Silva this week. A noticeably old and weathered Wolverine is prevalent during the X2 story. I dig his old school costume and his facial expressions are well illustrated, but where the hell is his nose? I know there's been a version of the character with no nose, but this version doesn't appear disfigured like that Wolverine. It's weird every other character in the comic has an appropriately proportioned face. It stands out like a sore thumb, and it's honestly kind of distracting. Otherwise, RB Silva's art is solid this week despite no action scenes to highlight his strengths. Marte Garcia continues to shine with his color palette. I rate the art 3.5 out of 5. Now let's dive into the good stuff. Jonathan Hickman's characterization and plotting in Powers of 10. The story is broken into 4 eras. X0, the dream, takes place when Charles creates the X-Men. X1, the world, takes place 10 years later. X2, the war, occurs 100 years after the formation of the X-Men. Finally, X3, the ascension, is 1,000 years in the future. After the revelations in House of X #2, I'm certain the X0 and X1 stories occur during Moira's 10th lifetime, but I don't believe the X2 or X3 stories are. I'm actually pretty sure they're from Moira's 9th lifetime. If you have your own theories, please let me know in the comments. The comic opens up with an excellent interaction between Charles Xavier and Moira McTaggart and Magneto. There's a tremendous amount of tension between the two factions. Charles sells Eric on a long-term, ambitious plan to save mutants. Magneto agrees, but provides an ominous warning. I won't acquiesce to sympathy or doubt. I won't give an inch. I will check you at every moment. Just beautiful dialogue from Jonathan Hickman. This is what Magneto's supposed to feel like. Very powerful and unwilling to bend his principles, no matter how radical they are. In the X1 timeline, which is probably the best part of the story overall, Magneto, Charles, and Cyclops finally reveal the data Mystique and her crew stole. The mutants become aware of Orcus, the group of scientists from S.H.I.E.L.D., AIM, SWORD, Hammer, and even Hydra working together against mutant interests. They've created a master mold in space, an enormous threat that spells certain doom for Homo Superior. The X3 timeline finds a small group of frantic mutant survivors. Here we learn what Rasputin, Cardinal, and Percival stole before Percival was taken by agents of the man-machine supremacy. Turns out what they found is much less definitive. Machines archived so much data the mutants didn't know where to start looking. They needed a segment of encrypted machine data so Krakoa can decrypt the information and point the team to their next target. The last surviving mutants are extremely desperate and willing to risk everything on one last opportunity to end the man-machine supremacy. Jonathan Hickman begins fleshing out his new X-Men vision in earnest in Powers of 10 number 2. He's beginning to tie together a lot of the previous story, and some things that felt off now make total sense. I rate the characterization 5 out of 5. Now I'm going to cover the plot without giving too many of the big spoilers away, and there are some enormous revelations in this comic book. Charles and Moira arrive on Island M in the Bermuda Triangle to negotiate a new partnership for the betterment and ultimate survival of mutant kind. Eric shows a tremendous amount of trust in Charles and removes his helmet, allowing Professor X to pass him the years' worth of memories he received from Moira in the final pages of Powers of 10 number 1 and House of X number 2. Magneto learns he plays a major role in the fall of mutants. Charles says, "Apart, we always lose." The newest partnership between old allies and enemies is forged. In the X1 story, we get a better view of Charles' headgear. At this point, I'm satisfied this isn't a version of the Maker. This is Charles Xavier, armed with 9 lifetimes of knowledge and equipped with a mobile Cerebro on a mission to save Homo Superior. Professor X, Magneto, and Cyclops strategize how to stop the Master Mold orbiting tens of millions of miles away. I'm absolutely loving Hickman's extremely confident and powerful Cyclops. Magneto asks, "Can it even be done?" Scott replies, "Does it need doing?" After Professor X says yes, he responds emphatically, "Then it will be done." Easily my favorite page in the entire comic book. I'm enjoying all the stories, but the X1 story is shaping up to be frickin' epic. 100 years in the future, the last rabble of mutants learn Krakoa has indeed deciphered the machine codes. They know exactly where their next target is, but without Percival to shield their presence, it's basically a suicide mission. While we're still not sure what this information is, it's clear it's vital for any hope of mutant survival. They'll need all the help they can get securing their next goal. Wolverine says pointedly, "You know the problem with this, right? There's not going to be anyone left to use it." Hickman is masterfully building the stakes in the X1 and X2 stories, and Wolverine still needs a nose. The final story is definitely the hardest to read. The Librarian and Nimrod see the arrival of alien visitors, the Phalanx. They were intentionally signaled to Earth from a world mind. Why exactly do post-human beings call for the Phalanx in 1,000 years? That's not clear, at least to me. This final story feels somewhat disconnected, but overall fits the theme of the X1 and X2 stories. Mutants preparing to come into conflict with machines. The final chapter ultimately feels more like a mind screw than anything at this point. Hickman is a very deliberate storyteller, and it's hard to predict much of anything. I'm sure this will all make sense when he's ready for it to. But at this point, the X3 story in Powers of 10 number 2 is the only thing holding the plot back. I rate it 4.5 out of 5. Hickman places most of the reference materials in this issue at the back of the book. But unlike House of X number 2's Many Lives of Moira McTaggart chart that felt like a post-story goldmine, the types of society's data and charts felt much more like work. I didn't really enjoy trying to slog through them at all. So far, the reference material from the 2 House issues have been terrific, and the Power story aids are much denser. I wonder if this is by design or coincidence. Either way, the reference material this week feels like work. Before I wrap this up, I want to tell everyone about a special stream on the channel this Saturday. Thinking Critical officially passed the 1,000 subscriber mark. To celebrate, I'm hosting a 1K subscriber spectacular this Saturday. Alterna Comics publisher Peter Simeti, color artist and editor Brett R. Smith, artist and marketing expert Timothy Lim, self-published author and YouTube star David Stewart, and journalist, writer, and comic industry critic Doug Ernst are joining the all-star panel to help me celebrate a huge personal achievement. Join us for a fantastic conversation about comic books, publishing, pop culture, and wherever else the conversation takes us. Fellow YouTuber and comic book retailer Perch will join me as special co-host. I'll be celebrating the achievement with the comics aficionados the next day for another all-star panel. I hope you join us for both streaming events right here on Thinking Critical YouTube. Powers of 10 number 2 is a huge jump forward from its predecessor and much more in line with the quality associated with the House of X issues. This is ambitious, bold storytelling on the part of Jonathan Hickman. It feels like nothing else I've ever witnessed in the pages of X-Men. R.B. Silva's art is better this week, but still lagging behind his House of X counterpart. Marte Garcia continues as the artistic glue holding both series together. Of Hickman's 4 X-Men issues so far, this had the best characterization. Many things are coming into focus as he fleshes things out beautifully. The plot this week feels much tighter and more linear, at least for the first 3 stories, than the debut Powers of 10 issue. I think the last act of the comic and reference material weighs the book down a bit, but this is still an excellent read. I rate Powers of 10 number 2 4.5 out of 5. This receives my highest recommendation for all X-Men and Marvel Comics fans. This issue is also much more new reader friendly than 2 weeks ago. I've seen a lot of theories and people trying to read the Hickman tea leaves of late. I certainly have a few of my own, and some of them are actually pretty far out there. Although I'm pretty sure this issue confirms my belief about X0 and X1 are occurring in Moira's 10th life, and X2 and X3 occurring in her 9th life, if you look close enough. I don't think this is the most fun story currently releasing in comics, but this is by far and away the most exciting. I can't remember the last time I was this juiced to read a comic each and every week it released. As soon as I finish the book, I'm in my private chats with my friends asking if they finished it yet, because I need to talk about it. And I get the feeling I'm not the only one. I'm not sure how long this level of excitement can be maintained, but I'm loving every single minute of it. Thank you very much, Jonathan Hickman. You've done what we all wanted. Made X-Men must read once again. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like. I would appreciate it very much. It helps us attract more views for the channel. Subscribe for future commentary, comic book news, and reviews. And don't forget to ring the bell for notifications. If you want to talk comics, movies, and much, much more, you can follow me on Twitter at Wes_from_TC. With that, Salamat Po, and I'm out.